或者是相对的比例，而是经济上的，而是技术上的，这些东西我们看得都很清楚。实际上是因为我们都知道，贸易战是打不下去的。
Let us be aware that while they preach the supremacy of the state, declare its omnipotence over individual man, and predict its eventual domination of all peoples on the earth, they are the focus of evil in the modern world.
The aging Kremlin rulers were still willing to bear the crippling cost of being a superpower. For the peoples of the Soviet Union, this meant a life where everyday items were in short supply.
The standard of living was very low. We lived from payday to payday. We couldn't feed our children properly. The food that was available was so poor, and the queues. We used to spend 3, 4, 5 hours queuing for some lousy sausage.
Kremlin could Reagan talk peace. In March 1984, Yuri Andropov died. His successor, Konstantin Chernenko, was too frail to start a dialogue. The West looked for some small sign of change.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I like Mr. Gorbachev. We can do business together. We both believe in our own political systems. He firmly believes in his, I firmly believe in mine. We're never going to change one another. We better hang on from them.
Cold War continued. The Geneva call for a second summit was repeatedly postponed. Fears of nuclear war remained, and even increased.
So don't you think that the concept of nuclear deterrence, in fact, invites the side that believes in it to use the nuclear weapons in the end, just to prove this threat from time to time?
Isn't a policy of conventional weapons with the terrible bombs raining down, with the missiles, with the aircraft, with the submarines, with the torpedoes, with the tanks, with chemical weapons. Isn't that based on the possibility of threat?
The Soviet people were being plunged into wrenching change.
We became particularly worried by the end of 1987. We saw that the country was not going in the direction it should. The situation of the people was getting worse and worse. The situation of the armed forces was no better.
Still pursued his Star Wars vision. The Kremlin now believed that it would never happen, and therefore should not delay agreement on arms reduction.
North Korea has been called out for breaking UN sanctions. They've been imposed to pressure Kim Jong-un's government over its nuclear weapons program. But North Korea has been finding ways to trade key resources such as coal and oil.
We continue to see illegal imports of additional refined petroleum using ship-to-ship transfers, which are clearly prohibited under the UN resolution. We must all be accountable for cutting off North Korea's illegal coal exports, which provide funds that go directly to its WMD programs.
So, how is North Korea evading sanctions? A lot of this is happening out at sea, and it requires foreign partners willing to trade illegally. A UN report says there's been a big increase in transfers of petroleum products and coal between foreign tankers and North Korean ships. This enables North Korea to effectively import these resources restricted under international sanctions. More than 20 North Korean ships have already been blacklisted by the UN for smuggling fuel. Ships conceal their activities by turning off tracking systems or masking the vessel's true identity. North Korea has also been observed shipping weapons. In 2016, 30,000 rocket-propelled grenades were found bound for the Suez Canal. The ship sailed under a Cambodian flag, but was crewed by North Koreans. The consignment was falsely labelled assembly parts for underwater pumps. Now the US and others want to expose the companies involved in sanctions violations. But North Korea says it can withstand pressure from the international community.
The perception that sanctions can bring us on our knees is a pipe dream of the people who are ignorant about us.
So, can the impact of these sanctions be measured? It's estimated that sanctions imposed in 2017 cost North Korea $1 billion in lost revenue. But the UN has estimated that North Korea earned $200 million from illegal trading, although others put the actual amount much higher. Talks with North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un have opened up the possibility of lifting sanctions in the future, in return for progress in reaching a deal to end the country's nuclear ambitions. But for now, North Korea continues to seek ways to survive under tough international sanctions.
아리랑 아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 아리랑 고개로 넘어간다 아리랑 아리랑 아라리요 아리랑 고개로 넘어간다 나를 버리고 가시는 님은 심리도 못 가서 발병난다 나를 버리고
Why have sanctions failed so badly?
Sanctions obviously have not worked. You'd almost have to say that they were designed to fail because they have been so ineffective.
And they've been so ineffective for a number of reasons. The first is the extreme and complete control that the Kim family wields over its people. So as a comparison, take Iran. It's widely accepted that the economic sanctions placed by America and other countries crippled the Iranian economy, and they were a major reason why Iran agreed to limit its nuclear program. The Iranian government didn't wield close to the amount of power over its people that North Korea does.
They still have elections, and also they still pay attention to what the general public thinks.
The total and brutal nature of North Korea's control over the media, over its citizens, it protects the regime from the consequences that sanctions have on its people. Another reason the sanctions haven't worked. Kim Jong-un has managed to protect the North Korean elite from them.
We are basically talking about the control of a small coalition of high-ranking military officials, Korean Workers' Party leaders, and top bureaucrats. Some studies estimate we are talking about somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 people.
By doling out money and power to that small group, Kim has kept them loyal. In some ways, sanctions have even helped him do that. The poorer and more insulated North Korea is, the more its leadership depends on Kim for things like food and housing and luxury goods. So what would effective sanctions look like? One word could be key: exports. There's a common misconception that existing sanctions have already shut off North Korea's economy from the rest of the world. Not so. They still export billions of dollars worth of goods. That's coal and clothing and even food being exported out of North Korea. And bear in mind, this is a massively impoverished country with food shortages. Those goods are being traded for cash that ends up in the hands of the Kim regime.
With North Korea, the regime does not use export earnings for the welfare of the people. So the welfare of the people, I think, should be considered irrelevant to the sanctions issue. And so we should be trying to essentially shut down North Korean trade.
The money that North Korea gets from its exports helps the Kim regime in a number of ways.
Those revenues are used for two purposes, both of which are essential for regime maintenance. One of them is the development of missiles and nukes, and the other is to keep regime elements loyal to Kim Jong-un.
Cutting that export money could drastically hurt Kim Jong-un's ability to control North Korea. The problem is that the vast majority, 75% of North Korea's exports are to China. For those sanctions to have any effect, the world needs China on board.
I had a very good talk with President Putin, probably over an hour, and we talked about many things. Venezuela was one of the topics, and he is not looking at all to get involved in Venezuela other than he'd like to see something positive happen for Venezuela. And I feel the same way. We want to get some humanitarian aid. Right now, people are starving. They have no water. They have no food. This is, Mr. Prime Minister, one of the richest countries in the world 20 years ago, and now they don't have food and they don't have water for their people. So we want to help on a humanitarian basis. And I thought it was a very positive conversation I had with President Putin on Venezuela. In fact, during the trade talks, we started talking about that. They were excited about that, maybe even more excited than about trade, but they felt very strongly about it. So I think we're going to probably start up something very shortly between Russia and ourselves, maybe to start off, and I think China will be added down the road. We'll be talking about non-proliferation. We'll be talking about a nuclear deal of some kind, and I think it'll be a very comprehensive one. We also we went into great detail on various things, especially, I would say, the nuclear, especially maybe Venezuela. We talked about North Korea, getting along with other countries, including your country, by the way. But getting along with countries is a good thing, and we want to have good relationships with every country. Well, the tariffs have been a necessary thing for me to do because in the case of the European Union, they have not treated us right. We're losing $181 billion a year. We have been for many years. And the European Union has not treated us properly. But we'll see what happens with regard to tariffs on cars with the European Union. We haven't made a decision on that. We'll be discussing next week.
Well, thank you very much. We've had a great time, a great stay, and tomorrow is really the main event, very important event in the history of Japan. It's over 200 years and something like this has happened, so it's a great honor to be representing the United States. And the Prime Minister and I talked a lot today about trade and military and various other things, and I think we had a very productive day. And tomorrow, likewise, will be a very productive day. And I just want to thank you. That was an incredible evening at sumo wrestling. In the United States, we contributed. I did this one personally. I didn't want to have anybody get me in trouble, so we did it personally. We bought that beautiful trophy, which they'll have hopefully for many hundreds of years. And that will be their trophy for the championship, sumo championships. And I think it was very nice, and we really enjoyed being there. That was something to see these great athletes, because they really are athletes. It's a very ancient sport, and I've always wanted to see sumo wrestling, so it was really great. Thank you very much for being here. では、時代の初めてのタイトル